Humanity Matters.
Hi, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Carin with my co-host Sami here, and this podcast is a production of the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center of Nassau County. And we want to welcome you back to It's All About the Children. So today's conversation is really about something that touches all of us, and they're the stories that we inherit and the lessons that we carry forward and what we choose to do with them. Today our guest is Dan Cohen, an entrepreneur, an author, podcast host, storyteller, and now he'll be a documentary producer. Dan's podcast and book, Awakenings in Real Life, grew out of an extraordinary story and experience with his father, who had been living with dementia, when his father unexpectedly awakened. Even briefly, Dan realized something profound. His father was still there. He still appreciated life, and he still wanted to live it. And in many ways, when his father woke up, Dan woke up too. And that experience led Dan to begin exploring other kinds of awakenings. Those moments when people come through trauma and illness, bullying, addiction, loss, disability, or adversity and discover something about themselves and about life that may never have been understood before. But there's another reason that this episode is particularly meaningful to us, because Dan is also interested in producing another podcast, documentary called I Am What I Choose to Be, which will be about my co-host Sami. As you know, Sami survived the Holocaust as a young child, and he has devoted much of his life to speaking with students about resilience, hope, tolerance, and the choices that we make when confronted with hate. So today we're bringing all those stories together, and I'm just curious and just throwing out a couple of questions, and then I'm going to let you take it away and say anything I didn't. But what is it that our parents are teaching us? And what do survivors teach us? And what do we owe the next generation? And how do we make sure that the stories that you both have are not lost? So Dan, we welcome you to It's All About the Children, and we're so happy to have you here.
Carin, Sami, thank you so much for having me here and that lovely introduction. I just hope that the audience, I don't know if they're going to have a harder time understanding my Brooklyn accent or Sami's accent. But thank you so much for having me. And yes, my journey, or what I'd like to think my part 2 journey, has brought me on a path of writing a book, doing a podcast, and to meet this remarkable, I know this podcast is not about you, Sami, but it is a little bit, and the journey of meeting him and the wonderful people in this room and the things that I hope to accomplish. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So tell us about you.
Tell us about me.
Yes.
So I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. That's why I still have the accent, in a Jewish family and a close-knit family. And my father in particular, and that's what generated the story, had a very profound effect on me. My father was a big personality. He was very loving. My brother liked to say he exuded love. He was demonstratively loving. So he hugged a lot. He used to tell us 2 things. As long as you try your best, it's okay. And you would think this is in conflict with each other. And you could do whatever you set your mind to. So you could do whatever you could achieve whatever you want as long as you did your best. So a very big personality. I like to say that he was my best friend. He was my problem solver. He was the family problem solver. A very important part of my life. In fact, one of the things, and I think this is important for the next generation too, my last chapter of the book, because I learned the other thing, I call it is the one. Who's your one in life? I think it's important for everybody to have someone in their life that loves you unconditionally, that has no ego when it comes to you. They want you to succeed. It can be your hero. It cannot be your hero. And my father was that person for me. And hopefully you are that for your children, right? But it could be a grandparent, could be that way for children. Sami's that person for a lot of people in this life. So view him in that regard, which is really part of his legacy. So, and I don't think there's any statute of limitations. So as I've gotten older in life, I needed my father just as much as when I was younger. I recall a story with Tom Brady, the football player. A young man was asking him a question, says, "You're my role model. Who's your role model?" And with tears in his eyes, he said his father. So think of us so accomplished, but his father was that one for him. And President George W. Bush, when he was president, felt that way about his father. So I think it's important for everybody to hopefully have that person in his life. If you lose that person, hopefully there's someone else there. Sammy's become a wonderful person for me because my father is gone too in a lot of ways. And so that's my, much as I love my mother, my father had that special role. Here's something else interesting, but I learned, and maybe I could help with future generations and children. I have a chapter in my book called, see, I'm going to plug my book, called Perspectives, right?
Okay.
So my brother's 3 years older than me, and he's a doctor. Then I came along, and there was a lot of Cohen men in the family. And then my sister came along 6 years later. She was the princess. They forgot about me. Everything I blame that's not good, I blamed on my mother being the deprived middle child. But I used to think, hey, nobody has this kind of relationship with my father, right? How could it be? We're so close. We're alike. I got similar personalities. We made him a surprise 75th birthday party. And my brother got up there. And my brother and I are very different. And he goes, the first thing he says, people tell me that I'm so much like my father. And I said, how could that be? I'm just like my father, and we're very different. And then he told 3 stories about growing up with my father. And he was right. He was very much like my dad, but you could see the tremendous love he had for him. Then my baby sister, who wasn't a baby, got up there and spoke. And she said, you know, my friends love my father. He's so warm and generous. But can you imagine being Herbie's baby girl? And then she sang a song to him. So I learned something interesting, that they felt the same way about him that I did. He had an incredible way of making everybody feel love. And then I thought, wow, it's so interesting. We're so used to viewing everything through our own lens, right? We can't see past the nose in our face. If you could see other people's perspectives in the world, and young people too, okay? If you could see other people's perspectives, you're going to have so much more empathy and openness. And I think that's a big part of our society too, especially political-wise. People are so dug in, they can't see their own person. So that's another thing I learned along the way, was perspective. And children too. You gotta with your friends, with your family or friends, you gotta be open-minded to other people's opinions.
I love the story that you told about your brother and your sister, and teaching the young people, the next generation, okay, about the different perspective, how we see ourselves, how we see other people. And many times, because we don't have an open mind, okay, there is a lot of confrontation, and words are very important, okay?
That's right.
Because all the tragedies in the world happened with words and bullying. So when I give my presentation and I say certain things, I don't give them the opportunity to interpret what I say. I will explain what I mean, so we are on the same page. So thank you for the story.
Wow.
Beautiful. And I love it. And
I got a lot more stories, Sami. You want to
well,
hear.
I'm willing to hear. So I'll leave it to Carin to ask you more questions, because we are working together. I know that. So let her go.
I mean, listen, if
Yeah,
you want, you share
sure.
more stories, or I'm happy to ask you questions.
So after the
we love
75th
stories.
birthday party, from my mother to the youngest grandchild, they all gave us. Here's another, and again, before I tell you the story, because he had a stroke 5 months later. he bled into his brain. And we were fortunate. He happened to be walking into my brother's doctor's office. They knew immediately he was having a stroke. So if people know signs of a stroke, his face was drooping. He was babbling. If you ask someone you think may be having a stroke to smile, they can't smile. That's a tell too. So they were able to get him to the hospital, and within 10 minutes they had the bleeding stop. So we were very fortunate with that. So at the party was 5 months earlier, we all had an opportunity to tell him how much we loved him. So I was thinking about that, and here's another thing, even for young people, that my father, after he had his awakening so his stroke led to dementia, and I'll go into that story. But I've been to a number of funerals, like I'm sure you have, and sometimes I know the person who passed, sometimes I'm a relative who passed. No matter what it is, I'm brought to tears. And I say, wow, that's such a beautiful eulogy. I have a chapter in my book called The Living Eulogy to My Father, because we often don't tell people while we're living. We'll say, I love you. You did a good job. You did a good feeling. But when you get the chance to make a speech, you make it when they're passed. It's a shame that people should hear it. So I urge people, whoever it is, and it could be a student to their best friend, to their parents. I told my father how I felt about him at that party. But on my 40th birthday, I wrote both my parents a letter. So I left nothing unsaid. So I urge people, in today's people write an email, right? Or they can do a video, or you can write a letter or a handwritten letter. Share with the people you love in life. And it doesn't have to be only someone older. It could be a friend. How you feel about them before it's too late. So I think that's another message that I'd like to share that I learned.
I love it too.
I'm glad.
I love it.
Anyway, so my father, who was this big presence from the stroke, led to dementia. The other thing I'd like to share is people are familiar with Alzheimer's, right? You have and dementia. Have you had any experience with dealing, Carin or Sami, with people with
my husband's grandmother?
Your husband's grandmother.
For 7 years, it was.
It's tough.
Yeah,
it's tough. It's almost like watching someone
deteriorate,
fade away,
right before you.
And it's a sense that you're mourning someone while they're living. So people don't understand the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia. So I think it's important. Dementia is the symptoms you get for certain things, including Alzheimer's. And it's a loss of mental cognition. It runs in stages where in the beginning it appears to be like losing words, like age thing, but then you lose short-term memory, and then the mind affects the body. And at the end, sometimes people don't remember you. You're really not verbal. At the end, my father was incontinent. He needed help getting dressed. He couldn't swallow foods. We had to puree them. He needed help getting dressed. When he would be shaved or bathed, he'd cry out in pain. Very hard when someone you love, you hear that they're in pain, but they're not in pain. He wasn't in pain, but he appeared in pain.
I have a question because I'm not aware of it. In my particular case, I was when my mother passed away, and it was very quick. She took her bread. Okay, it was not scary. It was not painful. Nothing. But in your particular case, once your father had a stroke and deteriorated, how long did he live until he passed away?
He lived about 11 years. Okay. Wow. So it's interesting. I think Yitzhak Rabin, he had a stroke and bled into his brain, and then he was like a vegetable the rest of his life. My brother was really a lifesaver because he was walking into his office. They got the bleed to stop. My brother literally kept him alive for many, many years. It's interesting. Towards the end, another doctor friend said to us, "What are you doing? Your father's not himself. You know, it's a shell of yourself. Why are you guys keeping him along so long? I understand, but the alternative is not a good one, right? When you pass away. And even at the end, right, I'd go there. He would just hold and kiss my hand. So the essence of who he was, the loving man was still there, and that made it all worthwhile.
I just want to tell a story that I very seldom talk about it. My mother had a stroke on the right side, so she became a vegetable. And I knew that my father would be at her bed every single day, waste his life. And there was a question, should we keep her alive artificially? I knew that my father could not do it. And I decided, to save my father, not to waste his life, not to keep her alive artificially. But I knew that my father would never forgive me. But I was smart enough to make him believe that he made the decision. And I am very comfortable with that one.
Yeah,
but in my particular case, I am very lucky. I was the only one at the bedside when she passed away. And seeing how she did not suffer at all, so I am not afraid of going to the next stage.
Yeah, it's very tough as a family to make that decision. And we weren't going to do artificial means for my father too, but during the dementia, it was just, he had his physical insurance was okay. But you know what? Before I tell you, so he had dementia for 11 years, right? And he went on a study downhole thing. And it runs in stages, right? So I never felt the urgency to go to neurologists and say, my mother, what stage is he in? Is he in 4, 5, 6, 7? It's up to the individual, but I didn't need the additional angst to know he's in the 6 or 7 stage. But I'll tell you some things that I think could help family caregivers or younger children that might have a grandmother or a loved one. It's a scary thing, yes, because a person with dementia, right? Okay, so quickly the causes. So Alzheimer's is plaque in the brain. That could lead to dementia. Certain diseases can lead to dementia. A stroke can lead to dementia. And what people used to call senility or a hardening of the arteries. There's a lot of ways you get dementia. So that's the difference. But I'm not an expert. I don't claim to be an expert. I'm not a medical expert. My mother was there all the time. Towards the end, we brought in help. I'll tell you something. Maybe you can give me a theory on this. So my brother and sister saw my father's decline much faster than my mother. He was such a capable guy. Like, if there was a family problem, she'd say, Herbie, go take care of it. He did. But she caught on the last, even though she was living in with the most. Any thoughts as why you think she was the last to really figure out how significant his dementia was? Any theories on that? I'll give you my theory. I don't know.
Probably because she didn't want to, because
denial.
That's what I would think.
She was in denial.
She wanted to see him the way she wanted to see him.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So when a person's going through it, right? A person with dementia, they might ask you the same question 20 times, okay? It's frustrating. And if you're a child, you don't understand that presence, or a young person, right? Or they'll tell the same story over and over, right? They'll ask you to repeat something. And our natural instincts is to challenge somebody, right? Oh, I told you that already, Dad. You asked me already that. You're driving me crazy, right? And the first thing I tell any family giver, whether it's a parent, a child, you got to really accept your person for where they're at. The other thing is, because it runs in stages, you hear people say, oh, my loved one was so much better 6 months ago. I wish they could be like that. But they're going to be worse 6 months now. Mm-hmm. You got to accept your person for where they're. And that's for, it doesn't have to only be dementia. It could be any kind of physical illness, right? Or mental illness. If you accept them for who you are, it's going to be so much easier on them and the family, right?
My husband's grandmother actually got dementia right when we got pregnant with Maxwell. And we would go there, and it was actually fun because we would tell her every time that we were pregnant. It was such,
That's
she was
funny.
like, and she would get so happy. So it was actually the opposite, right? Like, so
But that was
maybe if we
cute.
could,
Right.
maybe,
I
right, if we
know.
could like think of like what better messaging could we give folks that have dementia that would be like a really good news thing
Yeah,
that you could tell them, right?
That's a good idea. I haven't
Right?
thought about
We could probably
that.
come
Right.
up with a whole list.
That's
right?
interesting.
Danny, what I really like about the way you explained the stages that your father went through is that it's a very, very good lesson for the young people, okay? Because you never know what life will bring to you, okay? And, a simple fall, like in my mother's case, she just fell from bed, and all of a sudden she became a vegetable. So you never know.
You never know.
Nobody prepares you for those moments. And that's why the way you explain the things, this is very, very important for the young people. Besides adults, but especially for young
You
people.
got to accept. The other thing that I learned and was almost verified by when he awoke, right, is while your person, whether going through dementia, other mental illness, physical illnesses, include them in life, okay? I was in a support group and I read someone said, wow, isn't it wonderful? I forget who it was, my person with Alzheimer's, they're in their own world and they're happy in their own world. That sounds good, but that's not the case. You have to treat your loved one as a part of life and include them in life. It's so much better.
Right.
And I could tell you one of the great stories about inclusion, which became in my book, but I'd like to share with you if I can. So my father loved the horse track, okay? He took me as a kid, not the thoroughbreds, but they're called trotters, okay?
God, the harness.
The harness, there
Oh,
you go.
I love the harness.
Loved harness racing, okay? As a kid, he used to take me to Roosevelt Raceway out here and Yonkers, and I used to go. Monticello, yeah, of course. The Marshall calls the paces.
my God.
Monticello, we used to go to the Catskills.
Yes.
So he loved it, right? And he used to take me, and I used to have fun. So we continued the tradition with my children, right? And my father would handicap, and there was always one race. So we'd go 2 or 3 times a year. There was always one race he felt very strongly about a horse. It was usually the favorite, paid the least, but we went 10 times, 6 out of 10. So, right, my son is 6 years old. We're going to start first grade. My daughter's too little to go. He says, let's go to the track. He has a great day. We're winning. We're exciting. My son is excited. We'll leave. My father says, we'll go to a toy store. You can have anything you want. We go to a toy store. My son was into Legos. It's a $100 Lego. The kid is so happy. Go to the track, you get a Lego. First day of school, the teacher has an exercise with the student. She says, what would you do if you had $100? So that gets to my son. He says, I'd go to Freehold Raceway. True story. Now, the mall was called Freehold Raceway Mall. So we never got that call. Tell my parents the story. They're hysterical. My father calls me up later in the week. Let's go back this weekend. Dad, the kid's just starting school. We only go 2 or 3 times a year. I'm on a winning streak. Let's go back, okay? We go back the next week. He doesn't win a race, okay? Our heads are down. My son knows he's not getting a toy. Says to my son, I want you to know one thing. When you go to the track, expect to lose, okay? 10 years later at the 75th birthday party, it's my son's turn to speak. He gets up, he says, Grandpa, I know you like to go to the track. Now you like to go to Atlantic City and play poker another time. I want you to know one thing, expect to lose.
That's great.
Now, my father's in the depths of dementia, no short-term memory, okay? I'm at his house one day, and I said, Dad, you want to do anything? He goes, go to the track. I know 5 seconds after telling me, he'd forget, okay? My mother wasn't driving. The tracks here had closed. It was by me in New Jersey. I'd have to drive 2 hours, take them, bring them back. We went. It was my mother, me, my kids, my father, my mother. The first race comes. Now, here's another odd thing. You know how I judged his dementia? Over the years, he could circle less and less things on the racing form. So we get their first race. He couldn't even knew the odds at this point. We said, pick a number. He goes, number 7. Okay? My mother was...
number.
Your number. See, it's a lucky number. My mother, who read her book the whole time, picks her head up and goes, number 7. That's the longest horse in the race. He has no idea what he's talking to. It's like 45-1. My son says, Grandpa's a great handicapper. When he picks a horse, it's going to win. And I said, Mom, Dad knows what he's doing. We're going to bet number 7, put a few more bucks on it. We're all there. The race goes off. Our horse is in dead last. The last minute down the stretch, the horse comes out of nowhere, wins by a nose. Wow. We all go crazy, no reaction from my father. My son turns and says, Grandpa, guess what? You picked the longest horse in the race, came from them, but won by a nose. The biggest smile that I hadn't seen in years came to his face. That moment of including him made it all, the joy that he had on his face. My son.
It worth it.
So include your loved one in whatever area you can do.
I just want to say thank you for tuning into this episode of It's All About the Children. I appreciate you, Danny Cohen. We're going to come back in and for a part 2.
If you enjoyed exploring the information, history, and stories in today's conversation, be sure to check out our other podcasts here on HMTV. Please subscribe, share, and stay connected for more engaging conversations.
Humanity Matters.